I mean, this is really exciting stuff. I believe we've got two of the top people in horticultural therapy in the United States with us today. So it's a great learning experience. And then, afterwards, 5 o'clock, we're going to have a raffle. We've got lots of exciting things. A week on the company yacht, 2 weeks at the company house down in the Caribbean. And if you believe that, you'll believe anything. But we've got some fishing rods and money prizes and fun things to give away. It'll give you a chance afterwards to tour the displays. And I know Susie will help with that. We're going to have a El Pollo Loco feast. Anyone in here not like El Pollo Loco? There you go. It's a national brand. And then we'll have libations and lemonade and things like that till everyone decides to go home. Whew. How does that sound? Good. All right. So let's get on with it. You should have, for my presentation, you should have a handout that encompasses all the displays out there. I'm going to bounce around a fair bit on plants. So Susie put together these fantastic themes of different displays. So they're in your handout. And my plants, or my presentation, will run through that. Okay. All right, Susie, you're up. First one. We were going to be really slick and have this running off one computer, but it didn't work out. Okay. So quick update on the company. Village Nurseries. Is the speaker working? Is that better? Okay. So Village Nurseries last autumn was purchased by a fabulous company called Treetown USA, which is based in Houston. And so they're probably one of the largest tree growers in America. And they grow trees into some like 970-gallon size containers. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. They need 2 or 3 cranes to move these trees. So they're very excited, and we're very excited about the acquisition. Lots of things to learn. So we actually now go all the way from the West Coast down into Florida, down into Homestead and places like that. Just checking, no one nodding off, okay? Because you've got to be on the game here, right? So just a couple of really exciting things. Does anyone follow Pantone? Yeah, it's a good place to be. Pantone is the #1 color leader in America. They really set the trends. So the trend this year is ultraviolet. And for the first time ever, we have a plant that's named ultraviolet. It's a salvia called ultraviolet, right? So this has never happened before. So we're really kind of excited about that. I always talk a bunch about books, but I'm going to mention one book that you have to have in your library, written by a very gifted young man called Matt Ritter. Matt is a professor from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. This is his 2nd or 3rd book, and it's an encyclopedia on California flora and fauna. And I actually tried to get Matt to come down and join us, but he was like, no, absolutely not. Wouldn't. But he said, you know, you can talk about my new book if you like. So, but he's a very gifted young man, great horticulturalist, great professor. So hopefully one day, it just clashed with other things he had going on. But this is available on sale now, so grab a copy. You know, this is, the event is about plants, and we spend a lot of time talking about new plants at Village, but we mustn't forget the old plants. And there's been lots of new agonis which have come on the market. You know, there was the species out there first of all, and years ago, burgundy appeared in the marketplace. I got caught up in Jeddah and all these new varieties, and I never so much as gave burgundy a look. And I was over at the Huntington Library probably a year ago, and this is where this picture's taken, and they've got this wonderful cream, light brown colored wall, and they had just planted 3 or 4 burgundies along that wall, and they looked drop-dead gorgeous. The color of the foliage, the weeping habit of the plant against the wall, it was absolutely unique, and it gave me a real reminder, don't forget the old plants which have been around there for years. So we've got one burgundy actually on the other side of the displays. So it's a really cool plant. Right, I thought it might be fun to show you some things that we've probably never shown before. Right, we have our Area 51. So true story, I have a great pal of mine called Jeb. He's an ex-newspaper reporter. And he used to crawl up to the Area 51 up in the mountains in Nevada or wherever it is in the hope of being arrested. Yeah, he'd have his camera and all that sort of stuff. And he would crawl over the ground, because as you crawl over the ground near the fences, you set the alarms off, right? You set the sensors off. And what happens is the security police will come outside the wire and they will arrest you. And Jeb was like, yes, now they're going to take me inside. Okay, I will get inside the wire. And he had all these cameras stuffed up his sleeve, just like James Bond and stuff like that. But of course, every time they handed him over to the highway patrol. Right? He tried that about 5 times. But we have our Area 51. So we're going to show you a couple of things here. Bear with me. Anyone recognize that plant? It's a Lalandi cypress. It's your favorite plant, I know, right? I took this picture in Pasadena. Talk about a plant in the wrong place. So this is your regular Lalandi cypress. I think in England they top about anywhere from 90 feet high, pretty fast growing. 100 feet. Wow, that's almost champion material. All right. So they're wide, they suffer from blight, they're really not a very good plant. So we have the next generation. This plant is, this is a 4-year-old Lalandi cypress. And this is an example of the plants we're looking for. Shorter, more compact, a much better behaved garden plant. So I know, it's a good plant. Okay. So what we have to do is get this plant into some areas where we know there's some blight, so we can do a real full test. But these are the types of plants that we're looking for. They're much better behaved in the garden place. How tall and wide does that get? So the question is, how tall and wide? The mother plant is up in the Central Coast. She's 15 years old. She's 12 feet high. She's completely unpruned. And that's what she looks like. She's probably had about 60 cuttings taken from her, and that's it. So it's a marked improvement. What is the name of it? Oh, if you ask a lot of questions. We're going to get you on the dog run over there. Yeah. You're going to have to edit this, Albert. All right. All right. So your question.
I know that that's Cupressa cypress or whatever, Leylandii. What is this guy if I wanted this one instead from this one? What's the name of him?
Oh, the name? Okay, so the current name of this new group is called Shorty. That's the name we have on the plant at the moment. We have a very close relationship with a company called Star Roses and Plants. And some of you, I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of Star Roses. So that company is now owned by Ball Horticultural. So not only are they producing roses, but they have a large program where they work with breeders, not only in America, but overseas as well. Okay, so it's a very exciting program. Okay, the next one is a leucadendron called Hawaii Magic. Yeah, Susie's working my computer, this one here. Okay, so we're getting, I need to just mention one thing. The potting mixes on these, it's pretty heavy. But it's kind of a real native soil type mix. But what's important is there is tremendous survivability of the plants in this soil. And that's really what the key thing is about. So this particular flavor will get 4 or 5 feet high, about 4 feet across. Has these wonderful flowers that open up, which are a reddish flower. And then they turn to a kind of a yellowish type center. So it's a really pretty plant. The other one is called Ebony. Oh, I don't have a picture of ebony. So the other one is called Ebony. And we're really getting the numbers up. What you see is what you get. A really nice compact plant, about sort of 3 to 4 feet high and the same wide. Really great dark foliage. So, and a great, these are good improvements because they survive very well in the landscape. And then a group of plants we're working on, which I'm really excited about. This is a group of Michelias, and Michelias have just been moved into the Magnolia family. And the series is called the Fairy series, okay? Anyone into this new trend of fairies, gardening for fairies or anything like that? No? That's really good. That's good that you're not into that. It's kind of primarily Midwesterners and East Coasters. They've got these fairy gardens, and I'm coming out with this new line of fairy traps for the gardens. Okay? But keep that quiet. All right, this is a really unique group of plants. They're under trial with us right now. They're probably going to get anywhere from 12 to 15 feet high. They can be single specimens. They make great hedges. Once established, they're very, very water-wise. They'll do in a full sun position. They love a dappled shade position as well. The further inland you get, the more shade they're going to need. So there's a blush, and there's a cream, and there's a white. So any of you who are into Michaelias, this has got a lot of Dulsopa blood in it, which has got a real big, fragrant flower. And I know our trend, our shift is to very water-wise plants, but we still want our gardens to look beautiful. Dare I use the term pretty? Okay. Thank you. All right, so Vitex. Who's using straight Vitex in their landscapes? Okay, good plant. Pretty bulletproof, right? We had a large group of landscape maintenance people in here the other day, and the plant they were most excited about was Vitex. Just like he is, very excited about Vitex.
But it's Agnes, A-G-N-U-S.
Yeah. You spotted a deliberate mistake.
I'm a reading specialist way back.
We put that in there just for you. So what's really fun about this plant, this is really a great plant for summertime bloom, but we're working on some new varieties, and I've got one example here on the left. These came out of a breeding program from the Chicago Botanical Garden, and these, over on the East Coast, Vitex, are classed as an invasive plant. So the breeder in the gardens, Jim Old, bred a line of sterile Vitex. And we have 2 of these plants on the nursery. So this one is called Summertime Blues, and then its sister plant is called Chicagoland Blues. And I've had these in my garden now since 2009. Summertime Blues, unpruned, untouched, since 2009 is about 5 to 6 feet high and probably about 8 to 9 feet across. Normally Vitex, I mean, I've seen Vitex 30 feet high. I mean, monsters, absolute monsters. And believe it or not, they will live for up to 200 years. They're very long-lived. And the sister plant, Chicagoland Blues, is probably about 10 to 12 feet high and about 12 feet wide. Yes, ma'am?
Do they go deciduous?
Yeah, the question is, are they deciduous? And the answer is yes. Yeah, I know we like those evergreen plants in California, but it's worth putting this one in the landscape. It has it starts leafing out very early in March, and it'll carry its leaves right the way through to October, November. The blooming season is probably about 7 months out of the year. So my plants, I live in Brea, my plants have been blooming for at least 5 weeks. And I haven't seen a Vitex locally that started setting flowers yet. So the really exciting thing is this long, long season of flower because it's completely sterile. On new programs, who's anyone doing anything with blueberries, raspberries, blackberries? 3 solitary hands. 4 at the back. The man from Hunter. There you go. There's 3 more. All right. So fruit is really in vogue, and Village works a lot with brands. This is one of the hottest new brands on the market called Bushel and Berry. It's also owned by Ball. This is a new blackberry, which is a very upright variety, self-pollinating, will get to about 3 feet high, great for children because it doesn't have any thorns, and has an oblong fruit about half the size of my thumb. On the flavor scale, it's probably 8 out of a 10. It's a really flavor plant. And there's a real good story about this one that we can talk over libations later. And the other is there's a whole line of evergreen blueberries coming down the pipe. Lots of different varieties. This one is called Peach Sorbet. They're all self-pollinating. They call them southern high bushes. They're actually crossed with a Florida native blueberry called rabbit eye. I think you chaps pronounce that rabbit eye. Ha, 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 ha. Okay. Anyway, the plant gets about 3 to 4 feet high, the same wide. Early spring, they have these pretty pinkish-white flowers, followed by the crop of berries. And then probably about every 3-4 years, you need to cut them back hard. But they're great for containers. They're actually starting to plant blueberries now up in the Central Valley, beside the 5 freeway. They're pulling out grapevines to put blueberries in. So these are just a great crop.
That's called pink icing?
Sorry?
Pink icing, is that the name of it?
This one is peach sorbet. But they have peach sorbet, pink icing. There's a whole line of them. If you look up the bushel and berry line, you can see them all to be had. And again, that's another company that's owned by Ball. Ball Horticultural, really, it's a very quiet company. They don't advertise, they don't wave their flag, beat their drum, but they are amassing this line of spectacular plant brands under their umbrella. Okay, grevilleas. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on grevilleas, but at last we're getting our numbers up on grevilleas. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about these plants for 2 or 3 years. It's the King's series, which comes out of Australia. King's Celebration, King's Fire, Peaches and Cream,
King's Rainbow.
King's Rainbow. I mean, they're all exquisite plants, very good. A question I was asked earlier was the tolerance of grevilleas, leucadendrons. Kathy, thank you, this is a good question. To phosphorus. And these plants have no tolerance to phosphorus. Right? They do not, any phosphorus in the ground, it doesn't do them well. Kellogg has a really unique mix that's called native mix, which I think has little or no phosphorus in it. So that would be a great accompaniment for these type of Australasian type plants.
When will these be available?
I'm sorry?
When will these be available?
Oh, the question is, when are they available? We're selling these in some numbers now. But I know we're buying a lot of plants in. So going on in 2019-20, there'll be a lot more plants.
Are you carrying the old ones like Superb and Robin Gordon? We have Superb. We do. And how about Peaches and Cream? We have Peaches and Cream.
So the question was, are we carrying the old varieties like Superb and Peaches and Cream? And the answer was yes on both counts. See, that's when you should all cheer and stand up and wave and clap your hands, and there we go. All right, so really quickly, if you can't sleep one night, you're bored, jump on our videos site on YouTube. There's lots of really fun videos. Right, you can watch me bumbling along through all things. And then we had a lot of fun. Lee, is Lee here? Lee was working the front desk outside. So Lee is our marketing manager, and Susie and I work a lot with her. So she was the lady that directed our film crew, Jose and Ashley. Interesting couple. She is a graphic designer, and he's a lighting expert. And Ashley looks like a fashion model all the time, wherever you are. It's a great young couple. And then Susie, I just wanted to make mention of this. The Horticultural Encounter is going for another week. So if you wanted a personalized tour, see Susie while you're here, and she'll give you a guided tour. All right, so we're going to run through some plants. Anyone recognize this guy? Yeah, kangaroo. Okay, so who said that? That's good. So backdraft. I'm going to put some plants you're probably familiar with in front of you, just to give you a memory nudge. Backdraft is a really cool plant. We're excited about it because it's the Anagasanthes that has the longest season of bloom of any of them. Wonderful indoor cut flower. I spoke to some ladies who'd done some trials, and they'd actually had the plant for blooming up to 7 weeks indoors, which is tremendous. The other great thing is it has a really nice blue leaf. And we are hoping that this is more resistant to the ink spot, which is such a terrible problem with many of the kangaroo paws. Rufus, which is the species, also is reputed to tolerate heavier soils. A lot of the Anagasanthes don't like heavy clay soils. I had to put this plant in. Anyone know what this plant is? That's it. Sorry? Well, I've never heard it called. There we go. Okay, yeah. Oh, I put a name on it. So I think this plant is actually Brunfelsia magnifica. And years ago, I found this at the Huntington Library. No one quite knows how it got there. And with permission, I took some cuttings. So Village Nurseries, I'm pretty sure, is growing this. Takes a full shade position. Absolutely full shade. Likes to be a little on the moist side. Have some nice organic mix. It's evergreen. It's a very ungainly grower. Don't try and prune it to shape because she doesn't want to know about it. The flowering season starts in mid to late March. And I live in Brea in Carbon Canyon. And here we are. We're coming up to the end of June. And my plant is still blooming its head off. Large purple flowers that have a wonderful, almost lilac-type fragrance to them. And then a callistemon called bottle pot neon pink. We've got a plant over there on the right next. She's just this side of the coprosmas. This is a larger growing plant. She's probably like about 10 feet high and 10 to 12 feet wide. Evergreen, has this exquisite, bright neon pink flower. And we see her in the nursery being a long season of bloom. She kind of has a great season of bloom in the early spring, then she'll take a rest, and then she'll start popping flowers again. She has a bark a little bit like a melaleuca. You know how melaleucas exfoliate? She exfoliates slightly, not as messy as a melaleuca, but very, very pretty. Kind of a cream and brown streak. And then callistemon slim, we have one over in the corner. This plant is really going bonkers in California. This is being used on a lot of jobs. Great for a single specimen, great for a hedge. This is the original hedge out in Australia. Plant will top off at about 18 feet high and probably about 5 to 6 feet wide. So again, where I am, last year I got 4 blooming cycles out of the plant over the whole year. And that's unheard of for any callistemon to do that. Really nice scarlet, large flower, great for the hummingbirds and the pollinators. And called Slim. And then Ceanothus Valley Violet, we keep pushing this one. Anyone using Valley Violet in their jobs? No one. One person. Okay. How many people have heard of this plant? Okay. Well, so this is good for us. We've been working with Valley Violet for 4 years, probably about 4 years. Prior to that, UC Davis had been working with this plant, I would think, for several years. They put it in their all-star program, and it came out like with bright, shining stars. And we all know with Ceanothus, the issue we have is that they do great in the landscape for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then you go out one day, and they've just started to die for a whole variety of different reasons. We hope this plant is going to be one of the longest-lived Ceanothus in California. On the label, it says she gets about 3 by 3, but we were talking to a landscape architect several months ago, and she has a plant up in Sacramento that's about 5 by 5. So with a little bit of supplemental watering, they're going to get some bit larger. Exquisite purple blue flowers. I mean, it's really good. And they have a slight fragrance to them. Very small, holly-like foliage. And I think the history book shows that the deer, as a rule... You have a question, Kathy?
Yeah.
That's what I was afraid of. You always ask.
This water, summer water. How is it with summer water?
Oh, summer water?
Yeah.
How is it with summer water?
Some of them don't like it.
I don't know the answer to that question. Kathy's question is, how is this Ceanothus with summertime water? And I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out because they put this plant through the UC Davis trials, and all those trials are online, so we can find that out.
So UC Davis?
Louder.
Okay, they made it one of their arboretum. Okay. They made it one of their Arboretum All-Stars for the simple fact that it grows very well with general ornamentals. It will take summer water.
Woohoo. That's why Susie is here. Give her a round of applause. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I get mine in summer water and they do just fine.
And she does good? Great, okay. So, Kathy, thumbs up on summer water. Pour it on. Okay. Well, sorry, don't pour it on. Lightly. But it's, and then the companion plant is a Muhlenbergias, and there's some great Muhlenbergias out in the marketplace today. So the plants do beautifully together. I've got one of these in my garden, and it started off as a gallon, like a little weenie thing about this big, and now 2 years old. It's probably about yay high by about that wide, and it's really it's a nice looking plant. Okay, coprosmas, lots of coprosmas on the marketplace. Tapauta Gold, Tequila Sunrise. The two new varieties, we have them in our display on the right, and then we've got some really big plants over by the Kellogg display. On the left-hand side is Pacific Sunset and Pacific Sunrise, and on the right-hand side is Sunset. These come out of a breeding program in Australia. On the coast, they're going to do great in a full sun position. The further inland you go, they are going to need some dappled shade. They get about 3 to 4 feet high and the same across. Now, where I am in Brea, okay, anyone know where Brea is? Oh, well, your hand came up quickly. You must like Brea. Not really. Oh, okay. All right. So, I took these plants at home for the first time through the winter, and the color brightened probably 3 or 4 times. So the red became just bright, like London bus red. It was extraordinary. And on the drought tolerant side, I abuse my plants terribly. You know, if I'm gone, like for 4 or 5 days during the summertime, my bride, she's not really into plants. So I'll call her up, I say, sweetie, can you water the plants? And you hear the clink of wine glasses going, you know? So don't repeat that. Not a good idea to repeat that. Right. Okay. So, oh yeah, you're recording this, aren't you? I'm sorry about that. Yeah. See, we've never had a camera in the room before. Yeah. Love you, sweetie. Okay, things are good. Things are good. Right. I'll see you next weekend. Right. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
How do they do for wind?
How do they do?
In wind.
Oh, question is, how do they do in wind? Do you know, I don't know the answer to that because I've always had them in a pretty sheltered spot. But we grow all our coprosmas down in the Huntington Beach location. And that can get pretty windy coming through there because you've got the offshore winds coming in. So they're exquisite in a container. They really are. In Australia, they're doing a lot of trials using them as hedges. So in the picture shown here, we've got a buxus on one side, and then they've got sunrise on the left and sunset on the right. But they're cool-looking plants.
Well, I noticed they revert back to evening glow sometime if they're in part shade. I had one that looked more like Coprosma evening glow. It just lost its red, but I thought they were beautiful.
Oh, okay. In the shade.
Yeah, it was part shade.
Okay, cool. And then we have a Dianella called Clarity Blue. We're very, very close to the Sunset program. And Sunset are really doing an exquisite job on a lot of their new plants that they're bringing to market. The fun part is we're kind of getting in front of the curve now. So there's lots of new ones coming to the nursery for trialing and evaluation. This is called Clarity Blue, a Dianella. The plant probably gets 18 to 20 inches tall. It will spread as a clump. In the spring, early summer, they have a tall flower that will emerge from the center of the plant, like a pale powder blue flower, and each flower will turn to a blue-black berry. Extensively used in the landscape. I mean, the plants have a good track history. And then the Jacaranda Bonsai Blue. Okay, who is using Jacaranda Bonsai Blue? 1, 2. Right? I really encourage you to get going with this plant. It's an absolute winner. We've got a couple of great examples behind you outside the tent. This is the world's first, yes?
How tall is it supposed to grow now? Because when it first came out, it was 4 to 6 feet tall. Now it's 8 to 10 feet fast growing. And when's it going to stop? Because I know it's supposed to be dwarf. Slim is the same way.
Can you turn the camera off, Albert? So she's got, and so the question is, how big's the plant going to get, right? So I believe this plant is probably going to get somewhere about 18 to 20 feet tall and probably about 10 feet wide, right? But here's the deal. She responds extremely well to pruning. So this plant can be kept very, very well, probably at about the 8 to 10 foot level, maybe even smaller and wider. And what is really unusual about her is when you prune, when you do your pruning cut, most plants will break once, maybe twice. I've actually had up to 3 to 4 breaks about an inch below where the pruning has been done. So she bushes up very, very quickly. The plants that Jim's got a 36-inch box back there. And I think those 36-inch boxes were from our original group of plants. So that plant there is 3 years old, right? In fact, it's old. It's probably about 4.5 years old because it was a grafted plant when we got it. But they're very easily maintained. You're looking very worried. Should we chat afterwards or should we chat in public?
No, I hope it is what you say it is.
You hope?
I hope it is what you say it is.
Me? Yeah, me too, because there's a lot of people going to listen to that, right? Let's just cover this really quickly. The whole goal with our new plant program is to really get ahead of the trialing and evaluation program. And so often, the only information we have from the breeder, is it gets 10 feet high and 6 feet wide, and it blooms red flowers in the spring, etc. Okay? What we've got to do is to trial our plants on a regional basis. The plant might have been created over in Georgia. Well, we know she's going to behave differently over in our climate here. So one of the things we're doing is we're doing a lot more trials actually at the nursery in large boxes, right? We started this 2 years ago with a group called the Landscape Architect Design Group, where we were giving them plants for trialing and evaluation in their own gardens. We've probably not done a great job on following up because we all have a lot to do, okay? But that program is there. The other thing is we're working very closely with the UC Davis landscape irrigation trials. And that trial was formerly just up at UC Davis in Northern California. Now it's actually been moved down. It's still up in Davis, but it's been moved down to UC Irvine. So they have a 200-acre site which is surrounded by these mansions, these multi-million-dollar mansions. And every now and again, you'll drive around this 200-acre site, and the developers, they're up against the chain-link fence looking at the plants, because they just want to put houses on that property. But so UC Davis is putting this big water trial in there. Plants from all over, from Australia, from California, from Georgia, from wherever, are going into this trial by a lot of plant companies. And they're going to be open days, where you will all be invited to make the pilgrimage up there and to look at these plants, see how they're doing. So the trial lasts for 2 years. And one of the things they're doing is that it's an irrigation trial, so we're going to get a lot of really good information out of it. So there's a lot of good work to do there. See, look, you're smiling now. You're feeling much better. 5 minutes ago, she was not looking good. She was not looking happy at all. Right? Okay. Thank you. We'll have a glass of lemonade later. Right. So really big, beautiful purple-blue flowers, has unique fern-like foliage, and when the new growth comes out on the branches, it's a nice ruby red color. So I think we can really have some fun with this plant. Okay, we're working on trees, and we've got one in the back. This is going to take us a few years to figure out. Over in Israel, which actually is where our plants originate from, that's where we buy them from. There. Over in Israel, these are top grafted onto the species. So they're grafted up at 6 feet high. And I'm going to guess these plants are probably 4 or 5 years old, something like that. They're using them as street trees in Israel. So we're trying to do the same thing, but the jury's out right now. So ours are just bushes. There's Jim, our tree grower. Is Jim with us? He tends to wander in and wander out. Don't lend him any money. You know, don't lend him any money. Kind of. You'll tend to see him when the wine bar opens. He'll be up there. Okay, lavenders. The longest-lived lavender that I'd ever worked with in the United States to date was Goodwin Creek Gray, and I got 7 years out of Goodwin Creek Gray. Most lavenders, you know, they look great for a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, and then they peter, and it's kind of, you know, good night. But Merlot, the new lavender out of the Sunset program, I'm now into my 8th year with the same plant. I managed to get some of the first plants that came into the country. So for me, this is unheard of. Now, Susie is going to disagree with me, but the plant doesn't bloom. There you see, you're looking worried again. This is not good. This is not good. She doesn't bloom. I've only ever seen maybe 1 or 2 blooms on mine. She has the most exquisite fragrance of any lavender. So as it warms up during the season, she pumps resin into the leaves. You could be 15 feet away from that plant and you get the fragrance. And we've got some out here that we're going to give away, right? So we've got some plants out here we're going to give away. You can take one home with you. But, you know, rub your hands on the foliage. She's very, very fragrant. She has this really cool variegation, a kind of a sage green center with a light yellow outer. Very beautiful. So this is just one example. This has been a raised bed where she was used with vegetables, with thymes and things like that.
Therapeutic garden plant.
So Kathy is noticing a therapeutic garden plant. Horticultural therapists, are you taking note? Excellent, yeah. Teresa's making a note right now. So it's really a lovely plant. And then a laurelus called Little Ragu, which is really becoming very popular. It's a dwarf plant, gets about 5 to 6 feet high and probably about 8 feet wide. Very bright green foliage, much more so than any of the other bay laurels. Most of the bay laurels, they're getting up to about 18, 20 feet high, very fast growing. You want a low clipped hedge. This is great for the culinary side as well. You get a great fragrance from the foliage. You can use it in cooking, pate, all sorts of things. And the name is Little Ragu. This is a Monrovia plant, right? And they tell me that the people at Monrovia live in fear. They live in fear that the spaghetti sauce people will call them one day. That's a joke, by the way. All right, so Leonotus, an old plant, been around for ages. You call it lion's tail, and we call it, in England, we call it lion's mane, okay? So it's important to remember the British are always right. Okay, very important to remember that. So this plant is coming back like a racehorse. It's an old, old plant. This was, it's a South African plant. This was taken in the landscape. There's some big housing jobs that have gone in where I lived, and they've literally used 400 or 500 plants, and they've put this cream brown colored wall. You know, stucco type wall is becoming very popular to go around the housing estates, and it looks absolutely fantastic. What I have discovered with this plant, when it gets through its first blooming cycle, you know, it can get pretty big, 4 or 5 feet high. Go in there and take it back to about 12 to 16 inches high, right? And they will rebloom for you again in the autumn time. So try that. It's a really good plant. So on the Sunset program, a Nandina called Lemon Lime. I've been working with this plant now for 3 years, and she's got me. When I started off working with her, she left me cold, but now she's got me. Really handsome plant, does very well in a dappled shade position, and I'm doing mine in containers at home, also in full sun as well. We've got some plants to give away out there and also in the landscape. But when the new growth pushes, it's this great green chartreuse color, and it really looks pretty.
So you said that the new growth is the lemon lime?
Yes.
But what about when it's not new?
Okay, so the new growth is this really nice chartreuse color, and the question is, you know, as the foliage matures, then she goes to a deep green color. Yeah, but are you familiar with the USDA cold hardiness zones? Okay, so some years ago they did a heat zone map as well, and the heat zone map never really got off the ground. But what they found out was that most plants will shut down growing at 87 degrees. And once the temperature goes below 87, then these plants start pushing again. And lemon lime is one of those plants. When the temperatures rise, she stops growing. So during those hot summer months, then she's just going to stay absolutely quiet. But I think the book says she gets about 3 by 3. Heaven forbid I say this. I don't think she's going to get any bigger than 24 inches high, and the same across, and very globose in shape. A very well-behaved plant. I'm looking at my clock, and I'm going to do one more plant, and then we're going to invite Mark up to do his presentation. Oh. Yes. Yes. This is your $1 million plant. This is going to be one of the most sought-after plants in our California landscapes in the coming years. This was the #1 plant to come out of the UC Davis water trials in the last segment. The plant performed beautifully in low water, medium water, and high water, whatever that, you'll have to look on the website. The plant performs extremely well in a full sun position and also in a 30% shade position. So it's really very, very unique. It's a clumping plant. She's not going to get much bigger than probably about 12 to 15 inches across. The largest plant I've seen is about maybe 18 inches, 2 feet high, that Janet had, and probably about like 2 feet wide. But it is very beautiful. A green center down the middle, and then a cream yellow stripe around the outer. Wonderful for mass plantings, and great also for a container plant. And her name is Lamandra Platinum Beauty. This is really going to be cool. We have a lot of these plants coming down the pipeline. A lot. So, right.
Flowers on that one?
I'm sorry?
No flowers?
So the question is, does she have flowers, right? So if you look right down in the foliage, she has a small seed head that's about yay big, and the flowers are like brown, little brown colored things, but that's it. On the invasive side, and the trials they did up at UC Davis, if she was going to run and be invasive, she would have done it up there, because they had a lot of plants in a small group, and there were wide earthen areas between, so you'd have seen sports or seeds coming up. Yeah, cool. Right, I'm not going to say any more, so give us a minute, and we're going to get Mark's presentation up on the screen, and we're going to pass the gavel over to him. Does anyone? Oh, thank you. Thank you.